What's up, sports fans? This is the Lucas Ross Sports Channel. It's time to give you my updated college football top 25 rankings as we head into week 13 of the 2023 college football season. And yes, week 13 is here, the last weekend of the college football regular season, and it's also known as Rival Week. I always look forward to Rival Week each and every single year. This is one of my favorite weekends in all of college football. I know every weekend is pretty fun, but not as fun as Rival Week. So we're going to give you my updated top 25 rankings here for week number 13 of the 2023 college football season. And again, how this top 25 video works, I'm pretty much basing it off of resumes, basing it off of head-to-head matchups in the regular seasons, and also basing it off of how the teams have been playing this year. So again, this is going to be my top 25 for week number 13. And again, this is my top 25, not the real top 25 AP poll or something like that. This is my top 25. We've been doing this ever since the beginning of the season, and it's hard to believe it's already going to be the last weekend of the regular season. It pretty much starts on Thursday night and then continues all the way until Saturday, so the regular season will come down to an end this weekend. Let's now get into it here with our top 25 rankings. We'll start from the bottom and work our way to the top. Starting from 21 through 25, I got Clemson at number 25. Clemson right here coming off back-to-back top 25 wins against Notre Dame and North Carolina this past weekend. I feel like Clemson has played a lot better compared to the first half of the season. I think this is probably the best 7-4 team in the country. Yes, I have a 4-loss team in my top 25. But I didn't have any other options out there. I didn't have any other options with 4-loss teams. I had UCLA as an option, but I think Clemson has definitely proved to us that they have been the better 4-loss team in the country. So Clemson here at number 25. This team has been playing really solid football in the last few weeks. SMU here at number 24 at 9-2. They're coming off that big win against Memphis over the weekend, a pretty solid 8-3 Memphis team. It kind of was a tiebreaker between SMU and Memphis for that number 24 spot. Whoever won that game, I was going to probably put in the rankings, so I did put SMU in here. SMU is a pretty good team. They're a pretty veteran, experienced team. They do have a loss to Oklahoma in the non-conference. I don't think they were that bad in that game, so you got to give them credit there for that really good loss for this SMU team. So they're here at number 24, sitting there at 9-2. Liberty at number 23, still undefeated at 11-0. Liberty will be playing in the Conference USA Championship game against New Mexico State. And when I look at that game between Liberty and New Mexico State in the Conference USA Championship, it's definitely going to be a very tough one for Liberty. New Mexico State just pulled off a huge upset over the weekend. They defeated, Auburn, a Power 5 team. That was a really big upset there. It wasn't just an upset, it was a blowout. So Liberty and New Mexico State will be playing next weekend in the Conference USA Championship. But again, Liberty still remains undefeated, the only Group of 5 team left standing now, undefeated. James Madison out of the Sun Belt just lost their first game to a pretty average Appalachian State team. So again, Liberty is the only undefeated Group of 5 team now left standing here in the college football season. And then NC State here at number 22. This team is kind of similar to Clemson. They've been playing really solid football now for the last few weeks. I kind of doubted both NC State and Clemson in the first half of the season. But now when I look at this second half of the season, the later part of the season, both Clemson and NC State have just been very solid on both sides of the football, and they've been playing really solid football as well. So both Clemson and NC State are both pretty similar on, in the second half of the season. They've been much more better compared to the first half of the year. NC State right now, probably the best 8-3 team in the ACC. They have a pretty good chance to beat their rival coming up against North Carolina this weekend. We'll see how that game goes down. So NC State here at number 22. And I got Iowa at number 21. I know I have Iowa ranked here a little bit higher than all these other teams, but you have to give them some credit for what they've done this year. They're sitting there at 9-2, even though their offense is not good enough, but that defense just continues to overall to be pretty dominant. The game against Illinois was not really a blowout. It was a really low-scoring, ugly game. Iowa had to get a late touchdown there at the end of the game to really kind of seal the deal. It was a very tough trap game for Iowa. They're heading to the Big Ten Championship anyway. I think whoever they play in the Big Ten Championship, they're obviously not going to win it. I just don't really see Iowa competing with that team in the Big Ten East, whoever they play. It's either going to be Ohio State or Michigan. That game will decide the Big Ten East coming up on Saturday. So we'll find out who Iowa will play in the Big Ten Championship this weekend. But these are my rankings from 21 through 25. Let's now go into the top 20. So 16 through 20, I got Kansas State here at number 20. They're sitting there at 8-3, beating their rival, of course, Kansas over the weekend. Very tough trap game there for Kansas State. I wouldn't really call it a trap game, to be honest. I mean, because both of those teams are pretty much ranked. But Kansas State, this is a huge win for them to kind of stay alive in that Big 12 championship picture. We don't know who's going to be playing in the Big 12 championship game just yet. It's really hard to tell because there's like a three-way tie maybe for a second-place spot. I think you got Oklahoma State, you got Kansas State, and Oklahoma in that conversation for the Big 12 championship. And like I said, you know, anything can happen in the Big 12. I think whoever is going to be pretty much winning this weekend, it's going to come down to a tiebreaker. I mean, Oklahoma State already defeated Oklahoma in the head-to-head. We don't really know if Kansas State will get in there with that, you know, with those head-to-head matchups, but we'll see what happens. But Kansas State here, I got them moving up here to the top 20 after that win over Kansas. I was very impressed with them in that fourth quarter. Then Notre Dame here at number 19. Notre Dame with a bounce-back win after a couple weeks ago lost to Clemson on the road in Death Valley. They get a big win over Wake Forest, obviously Sam Hartman's former team. Notre Dame now sitting there at 8-3, still a really good chance to go to a bowl game. I think Notre Dame's going to finish out the year at 9-3. That was a very tough loss to, you know, Clemson and everything, but this team still has a chance to finish out the year of 2023 with a 10-win season. And then Oklahoma State also with a bounce-back win over Houston. They're here at number 18 for me. Oklahoma State, like I just mentioned, they're kind of in that three-way tie situation in the Big 12, even though they got beat really badly against UCF. The Houston game was definitely a trap game for Oklahoma State. You know, Houston gave them kind of a scare there in the first half. Second half was kind of the same, but Oklahoma State pulled away late in that fourth quarter. So Oklahoma State here with a bounce-back win over Houston at number 18. I got Tulane at number 17. They looked better, of course, this past weekend against a pretty average FAU team. Tulane with a bounce back a little bit just because they haven't been playing really good in the last few weeks. But Tulane is probably going to be that, you know, group of five team that probably makes it a New Year's Six bowl, which I don't think it really makes sense, to be honest. I think, you know, there's a lot of disrespect going on with Liberty and James Madison. Both of those teams are not getting respect whatsoever. But Tulane, I think, is going to end up in a New Year's Six bowl. Just that's my projection and everything. And plus, there are my projections for my New Year's Six bowls as well. So they're here at number 17, sitting there at 10-1. They just keep winning and winning. And then Arizona at number 16, they absolutely embarrassed Utah this past weekend. The offense looked really good. The defense looked really strong as well. So Arizona, they keep rolling. And Arizona, when you look at the Pac-12 standings, they still have a chance to probably make the Pac-12 championship, even though they're sitting there with a record of 8-3. I think what needs to happen, though, is you look at Oregon. They're second right now in the Pac-12. If they lose to Oregon State this weekend, it really comes down to a tiebreaker between Arizona and Oregon. But I think the Pac-12 is probably going to choose, who has the better record, because Oregon would have the better record than Arizona. They would have like 10-2, and then Arizona would be 9-3. But I think that would be disrespectful if Arizona did not get in just because it's a tiebreaker for the conference losses. I mean, I think it's all about conference, records when it comes to these championship games, to get into championship games as well. So watch out for Arizona here. If Oregon again loses to Oregon State this weekend, Arizona could get in. I mean, I really do trust that Arizona gets in if Oregon probably slips up against Oregon State. But we'll just see what happens here this weekend. But again, a very impressive win at home against Utah for this Arizona team. They just really exploded, in that game over the weekend. So these are my rankings from 16 through 20. All right, let's go to the top 15. I got Missouri at number 15. Close win against Florida. A very big trap game there for Missouri, but they were still able to come away with the win. This is definitely a Missouri team that's been very good this year. They've definitely been a surprise overall. They played like a really tough schedule this year. They got some big wins, of course, with Kansas State. They were very competitive against Georgia, which that was a very good loss for this Missouri team. They also have a loss to, LSU, which is just ahead of them here. But Missouri, they continue to play pretty solid football. That was a very close win, like I said, against Florida, but they were still able to come away with the win, so they're here at number 15 for me. And again, LSU stays ahead of Missouri just because of the head-to-head matchup. LSU sitting there at 8-3. I know LSU is an 8-3 team ahead of a 9-2 Missouri team, but again, it comes down to head-to-heads when you are doing these top 25 rankings. I know the AP poll doesn't really care about head-to-heads, but I do. So LSU here at number 14, they took care of business against Georgia State. No real problems there for this LSU team. And then Oregon State at number 13. I only dropped this Oregon State team about 3 spots after that loss to Washington. I think they definitely don't really deserve to be really that penalized from, that game, because obviously they just lost that game by 2 points to a top 5 team in Washington. And, plus the game was kind of, rainy. It was a little bit sloppy weather. If Oregon State didn't have that type of weather at their home stadium, they probably would have pulled off the upset here. A lot of people were predicting Oregon State to pull off an upset, which I did predict as well, but that obviously wasn't the case. Washington's defense played pretty well in this game, so Oregon State here. Again, I only dropped them about 3 spots. I had them at number 10 last week, so I didn't drop Oregon State that much. Again, they only lost by 2, and I think they definitely deserve a lot of credit for competing in that game. So they're here at 8-3 now. And then I got Ole Miss at number 12, a bounce-back win after a blowout loss to Georgia, so not much to talk about them. They took care of business against a non-conference team, so they're here at number 12. And then Penn State bounced back after a loss to Michigan, so they're here at number 11 for me. Penn State now sitting there at 9-2. But you look at the game against Rutgers, Penn State was in a tough first-half game against the Rutgers. It was definitely kind of like a trap game for Penn State. But defensively, they just played pretty well, and that's what won in the game. So Penn State here, sitting at 9-2. I think this team has a really good chance to go to a New Year's Six bowl still, even with just 2 losses to really good teams in the Big Ten to Ohio State and Michigan. But again, Penn State and Ole Miss with back-to-back wins, or actually like bounce-back wins. Almost Ole Miss lost, really badly to Georgia, and then Penn State just lost like by a few points to, of course, Michigan. So these are my rankings here from 11 through 15. All right, let's go to the top 10 now. From 6 through 10, I got Oklahoma now back in the top 10. And like I just said, you look at the pack, you look at the Big 12, I should say. The Big 12 is kind of in like a 3-way tie for the second place spot. We don't know who Texas is going to be playing in the Big 12 championship yet. We do know that the ACC championship game and also the SEC championship games are official, but the Big 12 and the Pac-12 have not been official yet. So those conferences are still waiting. We're still waiting to figure out who the opponents are going to be for Texas and Washington in their conferences. So Oklahoma here at number 10. We saw them against BYU. Definitely a very big trap game there. Oklahoma only winning that game by 7 points, but they were still able to survive that game. And just think about it. If Oklahoma did lose that game, they would definitely be out of the Big 12 championship conversation, and it definitely would have came down to Oklahoma State and Kansas State. So Oklahoma still, is, okay. They're still okay for right now in that Big 12 championship conversation, but they're here at number 10 here, sitting at 9-2. Louisville at number 9, a very good win on the road at Miami. A very tough game, though. It was a trap game for Louisville, but this team is now heading to the ACC championship for the first time in their conference history in the ACC. Remember, this team joined 9 years ago in the ACC conference in 2014. They have not been to the ACC championship in their 9 years here in the ACC, but now that's finally happening. And when I look at that ACC championship game now, it's definitely going to be a very good game. Louisville, I did predict them to lose the ACC championship, but Florida State now without Jordan Travis, that definitely could help out Louisville just a little bit, but again, I think it's still going to be a very tough game for Louisville. We'll find out, though. But this Louisville team finishes, with 1 loss in the ACC. And just think about it. They didn't have that 1 loss to Pitt. Louisville would start, probably be undefeated and probably sitting in there, at least in the top 5. But Louisville here at number 9, a big win on the road at Miami. I think, because Louisville's at 10-1 is just because of how the schedule played out. So they're here at number 9. Again, you look at the schedule this year for Louisville. They didn't have to play Clemson. They didn't have to play Florida State or North Carolina. So that was the biggest difference there, and this is why Louisville's been a very big surprise team this year. So Louisville at number 9, Alabama at number 8. This team just continues to be unstoppable. They took care of business this weekend. Not much to talk about Alabama, but Alabama is still alive maybe in the playoff race, but I don't think Alabama is going to get past a one-loss Texas team. They're not going to get past a one-loss Oregon team because both Texas and Oregon are both ahead of Alabama. Even though Alabama has a good resume ahead of Texas and Oregon, I mean, again, Alabama has wins over Tennessee. They also have wins. That Tennessee game probably not going to be a good win now for Alabama because Tennessee just got absolutely destroyed by Georgia. So maybe that win's not really good for them. But you look at Alabama, the way this team has been playing the last few weeks, they do have a chance to knock off Georgia in the SEC championship. I think I said early in the year when Alabama, in the offseason, I did predict Georgia to win, but when I look at, Alabama now in the last few weeks, I might change my pick from the offseason, to maybe pick Alabama in the SEC championship. But like I said, we're going to make those conference championship predictions next week, so stay tuned for those videos. But again, Alabama took care of business this weekend. So Alabama here at number 8. They continue to roll. They're sitting there at 10-1. Don't really see them struggling this weekend against Auburn because Auburn's coming off a bad loss to a Group of 5 team in New Mexico State. Texas at number 7. Another very inconsistent game here for Texas. It's kind of, the third straight week in a row that Texas has now been inconsistent. They were very inconsistent against Kansas State, only winning that game by 3. They were inconsistent against TCU. And they were only up 6-3 at the half against Iowa State. I know it was a road game. It was a very tough place to play, but Texas here still remains at number 7 just because of the head-to-head over Alabama. I'm not going to put them ahead of Oregon because Oregon is definitely playing a lot better than Texas, and I think Alabama has been playing a lot better than Texas as well, but again, I'm not going to put, the Crimson Tide ahead of the Longhorns here just because of that head-to-head matchup in the regular season. So Texas here at number 7, then Oregon at number 6. Took care of business against Arizona State. Easy win for this Oregon team. Oregon just needs to beat Oregon State this weekend in order to get to the Pac-12 championship. I think they will beat Oregon State, to be honest, because the way Oregon has been playing ever since the loss to Washington, this team has definitely played a lot better than all the other Pac-12 teams, maybe besides Arizona. But again, if Oregon loses this weekend, it really comes down to a tiebreaker between Arizona and Oregon. But again, I think, they're just going to, I think the Pac-12 is going to go by records. I think Oregon will probably have the better record. But again, it really kind of, comes down to conference wins when it comes to these championship games. So I think Oregon, if they have 2 losses and Arizona has the same kind of losses as Oregon, I think Arizona gets in. But as of right now, Oregon is my pick to go to the college football playoff as well, based off of my projections, just the way they've been playing over the course of the few weeks. So they're here at number 6. These are my rankings here from 6 through 10. All right, let's go to the top 5 now. I got Washington at number 5. 2-point win against Oregon State. That was definitely a very close game. Obviously, the conditions in that game were not very good for Washington, but Michael Penix didn't really play his best game, but Washington was able to, survive a really close game once again. That was definitely Washington's last, toughest test of the season. And just think about it. If Washington did lose that game, that's where the Pac-12, kind of shake things up. But, Washington, again, when it comes to these big games, they kind of just continue to prove us wrong. They proved us wrong against Oregon. They also proved us wrong against Oregon State. And they also proved us wrong against Utah. So Washington here now 11-0. Still the only undefeated team in the Pac-12 conference. And then Ohio State here at number 4. Ohio State took care of business this weekend against Minnesota. Ohio State will have Michigan this weekend. Big-time game coming up there against the Michigan offense and then definitely against the Michigan defense. Ohio State also playing on the road at Michigan. That's going to be the very toughest part, but Ohio State, they got to get their offense going in that game. The offense, I think, has looked good now in the last 2 weeks. They looked good against Michigan State. Now they look good against Minnesota, and that was pretty dominant, fashion from this Ohio State team. And again, Ohio State has weapons at wide receiver. They got Marvin Harrison, one of their top wide receivers in the country. So if Ohio State can go to him early in that game, that's definitely going to help them out. So Ohio State and Michigan, again, decides the Big Ten East. Who is going to head to the Big Ten Championship? We'll find out. And I also will give you a game preview / game prediction on this game tomorrow. And then Florida State here at number 3. They got off to a slow start in that first quarter, but second quarter, that's where Florida State kind of started to get things going, and then the second half, it was all the Seminoles in this one. I think Florida State was penalized in the AP poll for that, but I think it's just because of the injury to Jordan Travis, because Jordan Travis is now out for the rest of the year, suffered a really gruesome injury. I don't want to really talk about what the injury was, but my thoughts and prayers are with Jordan Travis, so hopefully he makes a really speedy recovery. But Florida State, again, they're heading to the ACC Championship. They'll be playing their last game this weekend on the road at Florida, which I think that could be a very tough game now with a backup quarterback that Florida State has now. Florida State, though, I still think they're going to win that game because Florida has definitely been a very big disappointment this year. But Florida State here, they will play against Louisville in the ACC Championship, and like I said, when I look at that game now, Louisville could probably ruin Florida State's chances of making the college football playoff because without Jordan Travis now in there, it's definitely a huge loss for this Florida State team. So watch out for that ACC Championship game to possibly ruin Florida State's season. Michigan at number 2, very close win against Maryland. Maryland came in there, really fought hard against this Michigan team, and obviously, the suspension to Jim Harbaugh is kind of an issue here for this Michigan team. I just don't think they're really good without Jim Harbaugh, but they kind of proved us wrong there with the Penn State game, and then obviously against Maryland as well. I don't think Michigan ran the football as well as they did against Penn State. The Maryland defense came ready to play in that game, so Michigan will be ready for Ohio State this weekend. Again, I'm going to do a game preview / game prediction on that game coming out tomorrow. It's definitely going to be an exciting game. Can't wait for it. Again, it's going to be coming down to who decides the Big Ten East, and it's also going to come down to who has the better defense and also the better offense and who is going to be that number 2 seed in the playoff. And I've been saying in my playoff projections, I keep choosing Michigan just because of the home field advantage and just the talent on this Michigan roster. But both of these rosters are pretty even, and both defenses are pretty even as well. So Michigan and Ohio State again coming up this Saturday at noon Eastern time, the biggest game of the weekend. And like I said, I'll do a game preview / game prediction on that game tomorrow. And then I got Georgia here at number 1. They took care of business against Tennessee. The first play of the game, Tennessee scored like a 75-yard rushing touchdown. It seems like Georgia, when they get into these early part of the games, it just seems like they give up an opening drive touchdown, get off to a really slow start, and then they start to really pick up the pace, maybe by the second quarter, and they, start to just pull away from there. So Georgia, that's what they've been doing this year. They did that against, Missouri. They did that against, Ole Miss, and then they start to pull away in those games, and now they did the exact same thing here to Tennessee this weekend. So Georgia here is still undefeated. I think they control their own destiny as well. But like I said, when I look at that SEC championship game between Georgia and Alabama, it's definitely going to be Georgia's toughest test. I think Alabama's offense is much better compared to, the few weeks that Tennessee and Ole Miss have played. And I think Alabama just has, the only shot to beat Georgia, to ruin Georgia's playoff hopes. There's not any other SEC team that can beat them out there. And I don't really see Georgia struggling this weekend against Georgia Tech. I don't think Georgia Tech is on the level of Georgia anyway, anywhere close to Georgia's level, I should say. So Georgia here, they're still the top team in the country here for me at number 1. Again, took care of business against Tennessee, so they definitely deserve to be here at number 1. And they also definitely deserve to be number 1 in the playoff rankings just because they've been dominant now in the last 3 weeks. But we'll see what happens here as we head into rival weekend here of college football. Again, these are my rankings here from 1 through 5, so the top 5 stays the same for me. And again, we still have 5 undefeated Power 5 teams left to go here in the college football season of 2023. But these are my top 25 rankings here for week number 13, heading into rival weekend of the 2023 college football season. Let me guys know what you think about these top 25 rankings for week number 13. Let me know down in the comments below. Do you agree or disagree? And also give me your top 25 teams down in the comments below as well. Thank you for watching this video, and stay tuned here for more sports content videos on my Lucas Ross Sports channel.